You are standing in a clearing, and something is watching you from the tree line. You don't know it yet. It hasn't moved, hasn't made a sound, hasn't given you a single reason to look its way. You are the strongest animal in your camp. You have run down prey for 3 days straight without stopping. You have fought off a hyena pack with a sharpened branch. None of that matters right now, because the thing in the tree line isn't going to fight you. It's going to end you from 40 meters away, and you will never see it coming, never even learn who did it. The wind hasn't shifted in your favor. Nothing about this moment favors you at all. Whoever is out there gets to walk home. You don't. That is not a scene from a war. It's a hunting ground, sometime in the last 70,000 years. And the uncomfortable truth buried in it is this. Humans didn't become the deadliest species on the planet by getting stronger, faster, or braver. We became the deadliest species by figuring out how to remove ourselves from danger entirely. To understand how, you have to go back to a moment when killing still meant paying with your body, and trace exactly how we made it free. For most of human history, killing anything meant risking everything. A spear only worked if you got close enough for a horn or a hoof to reach you back. Every hunt was a negotiation with your own mortality, and the price didn't drop for millions of years. Then, somewhere in that timeline, something changed the math completely, and it wasn't strength. It was distance. Here's what throws people off when they first hear this story. The deadliest weapon humans ever built isn't the one that hits hardest. It's the one that lets you hit something without it ever knowing you were there. Most people guess the bow itself is the answer, the bent wood and the string. It isn't. The bow only set the stage. The real weapon shows up somewhere nobody expects, not on a battlefield, but strapped to the side of an animal that had already been dead for 24,000 years. In a cave straddling the border of South Africa and Eswatini, researchers pulled out a small, worn stick of polished bone. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like nothing, a smooth little rod. The kind of object you'd walk past in a museum drawer without a second glance. Then they tested the residue clinging to its surface, and the result made archaeologists sit up. Traces of a chemical compound found in castor beans. They produce ricin, one of the most lethal natural toxins on record. That stick wasn't a tool. It was an applicator, something dipped and wiped along the shaft of an arrow before a hunt. Once you know that, the whole story of human violence starts to look different. Poison changes everything about what a weapon needs to accomplish. It doesn't have to be big, and it doesn't have to hit anything vital on the first try, it just has to break the skin. The chemistry does the rest, and it does it slowly, on purpose. A toxin like this doesn't drop an animal where it stands. It works its way through the body over hours, sometimes longer. The weapon was never really finished the moment it left the bow. The kill happened somewhere down the trail, hours later, far from the person who fired it. Somewhere in the last 100,000 years, humans figured out that you could scale down the weapon and scale up the death toll. All it took was patience, enough to let biology finish what the shot had started. That patience shows up in hunting traditions that survived into living memory. In the Kalahari, hunters would dig up the larvae of a specific beetle and work the toxin into an arrow just behind the point. They deliberately left the tip itself clean so it wouldn't cut their own hands while they worked. Think about what that detail tells you. These were people who understood the poison's behavior precisely enough to handle it safely, while trusting it completely against something 20 times their size. A single arrow, barely heavier than a pencil, could bring down an eland or a giraffe, not through force, but through time. The hunter fires once, then walks, following tracks and reading the drift of the herd. Sleeps, walks again. Eventually, they find the animal down, having done nothing themselves but wait for its own circulatory system to fail. No wrestling match, no moment where the animal gets a chance to fight back. The danger was engineered out of the encounter before it ever began. If a weapon like that existed for hunting, it was only a matter of time before it got pointed somewhere else. That's where this gets genuinely unsettling. Stick around and hit subscribe if you want the rest of this. This is where the story stops being about hunting and starts being about something darker. The moment a weapon can kill without risk to the user, it stops staying pointed only at animals. The archaeological record backs this up in a way that's hard to look away from. At a burial site in the Nile Valley, researchers uncovered dozens of skeletons dating back roughly 13,000 years, men, women, children with stone points embedded in the bone. Some bodies carried both healed wounds and fresh, fatal ones, meaning these people had survived an earlier attack and were killed in a later one. This wasn't an isolated tragedy. It's one of the oldest known records of repeated organized violence between groups of humans. Researchers still argue over exactly what triggered it, but the pattern in the bones doesn't change. And the weapon doing the damage was a projectile, fired from range, by someone who never had to get close enough to be hurt. Then there's the case that makes it personal. A man, frozen into an alpine glacier for over 5,000 years, was long assumed to have died from exposure to the cold. A scan told a different story. A stone arrowhead lodged deep in his shoulder, fired from behind and below, tearing a major artery. He bled out within minutes. There were defensive wounds on his hand from a fight days earlier. He knew someone was after him, but the killing blow came from someone he likely never saw. That's the entire point of the weapon. It doesn't require you to win a confrontation. It removes the fight altogether. Compare that to everything that came before it. A thrusting spear cost you a shattered rib if the animal turned on you mid-strike. A thrown spear cost you your position the second your arm went back, because any prey watching the horizon could see that motion coming and bolt. Every weapon up to this point charged the user something. Exposure, proximity, risk, pain. The bow and the poisoned arrow charged nothing. One person, regardless of size or strength, could kill from a place of total safety, do it quietly, do it repeatedly, and walk away before anyone even knew they'd been there. Once that idea existed that you could take a life without ever putting your own life on the table, nobody who found it ever gave it up. It just kept getting refined, generation after generation, culture after culture, each one shaving a little more risk off the person pulling the trigger. Longer range. Less exposure. More separation between the hand making the decision and the body absorbing the consequence. You can trace that same inheritance forward through every weapon that followed. The rifle, the guided missile, the drone that circles somewhere you'll never spot it. Different tools, same logic, first worked out by someone crouched in tall grass with a bent bow and a poisoned point. There's a psychological price hiding underneath all of this. 2, every step away from a target is a step away from feeling responsible for what happens to it. Close-range killing forces you to watch, to feel resistance, to know exactly what you did. Killing from a distance lets the mind treat it as something closer to launching an object than ending a life. That gap between the hand and the consequence isn't only physical, it's emotional, and it's the same gap every distance weapon since has quietly widened. A little further with each generation, until the person responsible and the person affected might never occupy the same country, let alone the same clearing. So if you're looking for the moment humans became the most dangerous species alive, don't look for the sharpest blade or the heaviest club. Look for the first tool that let a person kill something without that something ever getting the chance to fight back. That's not really a weapon in the way we usually think about weapons. It's a rule. Once it was discovered, nobody who found it ever let it go. Whoever can strike from furthest away, safest, wins. We didn't invent that rule recently. We wrote it first in bone, wood, and beetle poison tens of thousands of years ago. Every weapon built since has just been us finding new ways to make the distance a little longer.